All right, everybody, this is a How We Solve live stream, and I'm super duper excited to have Mike Paton on the call. For those of you who know me better, they know that I'm a total EOS nerd. It has been absolutely mind blowing when I read the book, and I've implemented it in all of my businesses and in a bunch of businesses of my friends, and everybody loves it. It's really a game changer if you run a business and you don't want to lose hair or don't want to get gray hair. I highly recommend that you read it. It's super impactful. So I'm super stoked to have Mike on. Mike Paton is the visionary at EOS Worldwide. That's the company behind EOS. Mike has spent most of his life learning from entrepreneurs, and today he spends all of his time giving back as an author, award-winning speaker, a certified EOS implementer, and the global ambassador of EOS Worldwide. Mike helps entrepreneurs to clarify, simplify, achieve their vision by mastering the simple concepts and practical tools he will be sharing with us today. Mike, thank you very much for coming on. It's 11:30 p.m., but I'm totally up and hyped because I'm so excited to have you.
It's fabulous to be here, David. Thank you for those kind words, and I'm excited about talking to your listeners.
Thank you for EOS promoting it. So today we're solving the problem. We chat quickly before the podcast about this, or before the live show. What is EOS solving? And he said, like, it's solving that you get what you want from your business, which is which makes a lot of sense. And yeah, so we at everybody who's dealt with EOS, there are the 6 key components which you can see behind Mike on the orange wheel. And I'd love to run through the 6 components so people can get a better understanding on about EOS. And maybe before we get into this, because I had this question a lot, like, with which of the components do you start best? Like what's the one that you start best? Maybe you walk through the 6 components and then.
Yeah, that's good. Let's do the high level overview, and then we can get into the specifics. I think it'll make more sense. I do want to talk a little bit about that get what you want from your business thing, because I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who feel like that is an unnatural expectation, that they're supposed to be frustrated and feel stuck and feel like their business is running them instead of running their business. And
it's supposed to be hard, right?
Yeah. And why, what do you mean I'm supposed to get what I want from my business? That doesn't seem right. And so I just want to make sure everybody hears me say far too many entrepreneurs are trapped in their businesses and they don't have anybody to talk to about the challenges and frustrations and sleepless nights and disappointing people around you and all of that stuff. And if you're feeling that way, number one, you're normal. Somewhere between 90 and 95% of all businesses founded in this world fail in the first 10 years. And a lot of the ones that succeed are run and led by people who are not feeling very good about their quality of life. And it's Gino Wickman's mission and mine and everybody else affiliated with EOS Worldwide to fix that, because we think there are set up pretty simple tools and disciplines that everybody, no matter what level of mastery you have around business, can use to make things better. And so that's what I'm going to share with you and your listeners and watchers today is a simple set of tools that might help. That makes sense.
And so definitely helps.
To answer your very specific question, when you implement EOS in your business, you're learning to look at your business through the lens of the EOS model. As you say, that's the wheel behind me here. And the EOS model is a way of looking at your business that says there are 6 things that you need to get really good at in order to run a truly great organization. And those 6 things we call the 6 key components. So it's the vision component is component number 1, and that's getting everybody in the company 100% on the same page with where you're going and how you plan to get there. The second key component is the people component, and that's making sure you're able to attract and retain your definition of great people. And the trick there is the way you define a great person is different from the way all the other employers in your area define that. And so we've got to help you do that. The third component is called the data component, and that's running your business on facts and figures, using objective information to make better, faster decisions rather than either drowning in data, which is what a lot of companies are doing right now, or having no data whatsoever and running everything on gut feel. Okay. Once you're good at vision, people, and data, strong in those components, what happens is the whole organization becomes transparent and crystal clear. And so a bunch of issues get smoked out. And so the issues component is about getting really good at recognizing those issues as they arise and then setting them up, knocking them down, and making them go away forever rather than letting them linger for weeks, months, sometimes even years.
Lifetimes.
That's yes, or forever. I'm going to be stuck with that for life. The fifth key component is called the process or process component. And that's about getting the most important things in the business done the right and best way every single time, even when you're not there to coach, manage, mentor people, or what we all do way too often. And David, I'm guessing you were guilty of this as much as I was. We nudge everybody else out of the way and just do it ourselves because it's easier that way. And then the last key component at the bottom of the model is called the traction component. And it's at the bottom of the model for a reason. Vision at the top, traction at the bottom, because no matter how compelling your vision, if you can't bring that vision down to the ground and execute on it day to day with discipline and accountability, you're not going to get anywhere and you're going to get frustrated. And so those are the 6 key components. And when you implement EOS, you're actually working at pretty much the same time on strengthening all 6 of them. Because the key is if you're not 80% strong in all 6 of those key components, you're going to have lots of issues that are really difficult to deal with. And so that's the journey. That makes sense.
It makes absolute sense. And kind of going back to the initial questions I had, like, where do you start? What do you implement first? And from my experience, I'm curious what you think about this. I found that implementing the level 10 meetings, which is a structured meeting format, that kind of touched upon a lot of the elements. You have the rocks in there, which is like your 90-day plan. You have,
Right.
And so by having this meeting structure, this was like for me always the best way of getting started and implementing it.
Yeah, certainly. The process is over this shoulder, and so that document behind me, which is available at our website eosworldwide.com, lays out exactly what order a professional EOS implementer teaches to his or her clients as they move through the process. But you kind of nailed it. The level 10 meeting is one of the traction tools of EOS. There are 2 tools or disciplines in the traction component, which is about discipline and accountability. When we implement EOS with a leadership team, we actually don't start with the vision. We start with the stuff that helps you gain traction, that makes it clear to everybody on your team what you're accountable for, helps you prioritize a little better, and then puts in place a meeting pulse or a cadence for the leadership team to come together regularly and keep their scorecard numbers on track, their priorities or rocks on track, and drives accountability for executing well in your role on the accountability chart. So that's really where I recommend people start, is all the stuff that helps give clear discipline and accountability to the leadership team. And then once the leadership team masters all that stuff, you can start migrating the use of those tools and processes down into the organization until everybody in the company is clear on the vision, executing well with discipline and accountability.
Yeah, also I found, I don't know if I read this in the book or if somewhere else, if I came up with this, with the level 10 meeting, you kind of see tangible results really, really fast. And this helps to get like buy-in from the entire team. Like, hey, this EOS stuff actually really works, versus working on the vision is like something, that people can't really grasp, vision and mission values. It's also when the house is on fire, when people are struggling in the business, and then you come like, oh yeah, let's do this woo-woo stuff first, then people may be like, yeah, what are you talking about?
Yeah, and so when we are working on the traction stuff first with a client, one of the questions we'll get asked a lot, David, is, whoa, why am I working on all this stuff before we agree on our vision? right? And because we implement EOS with companies that are up and running and they're just looking to get better at executing, they're not starting a business from scratch and imagining what they're trying to accomplish. What we're able to say is, we've got to root your vision in a firm foundation of discipline and accountability. Once everybody on the team knows what they're accountable for, then when we're having discussions about what our vision is, the person who's accountable for executing on that vision is going to speak up and say, I feel confident I can help us get there, or I think you're crazy. We're not going to be selling $2 billion worth of stuff all over the globe in 3 years. And so you're going to get your team on the same page with the vision for the organization when everybody's clear on what they're accountable for and how good we are at prioritizing. And so that's another reason to use tools like the Level 10 meeting and rock setting and completion and scorecards first, is because then you start to get a hang for, oh my goodness, I'm actually, it's not just writing a vision down on a piece of paper and saying that's what we're going to go do. I'm going to be accountable for this. And so you really mean it when you finish the vision work in an EOS company as a member of the leadership team.
You know, with vision, mission, values at Maxian, my previous business, we all were like, hey, let's just rather work on product and not think about this stuff that we thought mission, vision, values you only need for a investor deck, and then you kind of bury it somewhere on the website, like nobody needs this stuff. And we came to realize that this is actually the best management tool there is, because we grew fairly fast, and we had a clear mission and vision on why we're doing this, but we messed up by not telling this everybody in the organization. Then we grew really fast, and then we ended up running into 10 different directions. We hired a new head of sales who was running after enterprise clients, even though this was not really our focus. We hired a head of engineering who came from a big data provider, and he wanted to, he built this crazy cool analytics engine on top of our software, which was cool only for 5% of our customers. Everybody else, like, what are we doing with this? So we really ran in 10 different directions. Nothing was moving anymore. And then we realized, like, hey, this is actually because we don't have mission, vision, and values set up. And then we implement this, and then everything was kind of running smooth. And and since then I became such a vision, mission, values nerd, and kind of like really obsessing on like, how can I implement this in the business so everybody knows this and everybody can make decisions the same way the leadership team or we would make decisions. And I have a really cool example for this. A friend of mine founded Ring.com, the doorbell company. Video calls.
Yes.
And I talked to his head of engineering about vision, mission, values, who were nerding out on this. And he said, we have these floodlights that you put on the side of the house. And when somebody walks past, the floodlights go on. Then you can see them on your camera and say, like, hey, what are you doing on my property? Leave or call the police, this type of thing, right? And one of his engineers came to him and said, like, hey, we have these floodlight things. How about we program the party mode? So if you turn on party mode, the thing starts, listening to the music. Since it has a microphone, then it flashes with the music. He thought that's the best idea ever, right? And he could have said, like, no, this is a stupid idea. Just go back to your desk and keep on working. Then this guy would have been discouraged, and he probably would have never brought up other ideas that he has. But he said, okay, that's cool, but what does this have to do with our mission, which is to make neighborhoods safer? Nada. And the engineer was like, yeah, you're right. And so, like, having this deep understanding, if like, everybody in the organization knows what the mission, vision, and the goals are, then they will make the right decisions by themselves without even asking, and this is like.
So David, there's so many lessons in what you just said. I couldn't agree more. And what I want the people watching to think about is, everything we do is designed to be useful. One of the truisms of an entrepreneurial company is you don't have a lot of free time. But most of the clients that engage with me are already working 60 or 70 hours a week, sometimes more. They're feeling like they wish they could spend more time in their business because there's so much to do. And so if you have mission, vision, and values, or as we call it, a vision and a plan as articulated on the VTO, the reason to have it is so you can achieve your vision. You don't, having a vision and not getting any closer to achieving it isn't valuable. And so, for example, the reason to have a set of core values is so you can get your leadership team 100% on the same page with the culture you want. And then once that happens, so you can hire people, review, reward, and recognize people, and when necessary, terminate people because they just don't share your core values. So those are a useful tool to drive culture and surround yourself with the kind of people you want to hang out with for the rest of your career. They're not to be put on the wall behind the receptionist and impress somebody who walks into your office. That's worthless. It's worthless. And so, again, every ounce of energy you put into this system or others like it ought to be getting you one step closer to achieving your vision.
I have two things with culture and hiring the right people that you may like. At Max CDN, my previous business, which was a content delivery network, so very engineering driven, our first core value was build cool shit. Kind of shit spelled with like hashtag and blah. And we did this because we, were like a crazy startup, and we didn't want somebody who comes in with a suit and tie and, kind of wants to work, because they would not be a culture fit. We want to repel them with, I don't want to work for a company who uses the word shit in their core values, right? And the other thing we wanted to get is like, we want to attract engineers who love to build cool shit, so this is like kind of the idea.
That's right.
And now in my businesses, I always have at the last page of the contract that they sign with us, we have listed all the core values, and they have the initial next to each core value. And the idea is like, if you're not living up to those, it's a reason for termination. So every kind of like from the very start, we only want to attract the people who are really bought into our mission and vision and our values, and know like, yeah, if I don't really feel this, then I should not even join here.
Yeah, that's a great story. Great story. That's exactly right. If you build it, use it. And if you don't use it, you're either tolerating people who don't fit your culture, or it's a suggestion at best. So.
Yep. And then also, could go on. I'm very passionate about this, as you can feel. With mission values, it's the best management tool to explain every decision that you make. Kind of ideally tie it back to a mission, vision, or value. So you really hammer this into people's heads that everybody can.
Well, and if you do that 3 or 4 times, what happens is your people quit asking you to depart from the mission, vision, values, because they're able to go analyze the decisions they're making every day through the lens of your vision and plan. And that takes pressure off the leaders, the mid-managers, as your organization grows. It just makes independent decision-making more palatable. And that's one of the things I hear a lot is, entrepreneurs will say to me all the time, "Hey, Paton, I started this business to be free, man. I don't want a bunch of rules around here." And when you have 100 people, if you want to keep being free, you'll equip them with a set of tools they need to make better independent decisions that perpetuate your company's vision. Otherwise, your employees are free as hell, because all they do is come find the owner and ask the owner what to do 100% of the time. It's exhausting. That's why you're not free. So I couldn't agree with you.
I love it. So what's next? We kind of had the vision part. We talked about the people part, and you have like cool tools like the right people in the right seats, some analyzers, etc. We don't have. I don't want to take up too much of your time because we have a lot of other steps. So, but there's like awesome tools in EOS that people can use. What's the next one in order? So we have vision, people.
In order as we talk about them, it's the data components, and again, that's running the business on objective information, a handful of numbers that give you an absolute pulse on your business, help you predict the results you're going to get next month or next quarter, and therefore make better, stronger, faster decisions that'll keep your numbers on track, predict and deliver better results, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A couple of tools and disciplines there is we teach the leadership team to implement a simple 5 to 15 number scorecard that they review on a weekly basis in their level 10 meeting. And those 5 to 15 numbers are leading indicators, activities-based numbers that predict future results. And so if you see a leading indicator to sales results off track, you can react to that off-track leading indicator in time to correct people's behaviors and get better results before they hit your bottom line. That's our approach to strengthening the data component. And I love the data component like nobody's business. For me, when you strengthen the data component of your business and everybody in the organization has at least one number that dovetails up to a team or department or organizational scorecard, you're running your company the way a great championship sports team runs itself, where they're looking at people's body fat mass index and heart rate and their workout quality, and every player is accountable for his or her own performance, practice regimen, and fitness, so that the head coach or the assistant coaches don't have to be accountable for all that stuff, because everybody's taking personal responsibility for keeping their own numbers on track. That is nirvana for a leader and manager, and that's why I'm so passionate about the data component.
There's two other things I really love about this. Like, one is the transparency that it gives you. If you review this on a regular basis, like weekly in the level 10 meetings, kind of always go over this. So there's like no hiding, it's like kind of living up to this. And the other thing is that the person who's responsible for a number finally can know, am I doing a good job or not in the business? Because often like people just work and work hard, but they can't really tell, like, am I doing a good job or not? So I kind of like having that. What are the top 5 leading indicators that you see? Is it number of leads? Is it number of calls set up? I guess revenue. I guess deals closed.
Yeah, kind of. My head is a compartmentalizing head, and so I always think about it in terms of the major functions of a business. So for marketing and sales, it's the activities you engage in that create qualified leads. And that's a different thing for all different kinds of companies, right? Some it's events, some it's social media content, some it's outbound calls, whatever. And then for sales, it's whatever your sales process or sales funnel looks like. What's at the top of the funnel? We've got to identify a target market prospect is step 1. We've got to make an initial contact attempt with a decision maker at that target market prospect is step 2. If we make contact and they hear us out, step 3 is scheduling a meaningful meeting with them to discuss fit potential. Step 4 is a proposal. Step 5. And so that's what we do with our clients. We kind of walk them through all the processes and their major functions that lead to the results you want. And it is from that conversation that the best leading indicators come. There's a direct correlation between the data and the process component, in that the more you are aware of the best way to do everything that's important in your business, the better you're going to be at identifying leading indicators.
Also, what I love about the level 10 meetings, that you kind of go over it, and then if a number is off, you don't really talk about it, just move it to the IDS so you can talk about the stuff that actually matters in the meeting, so you don't like just spend a bunch of time on like something that's like actually not really the meaningful.
Yeah, and that might bear a conversation here. So imagine you've got a 5 to 15 number scorecard in your weekly level 10 meeting with your leadership team, and for each of those metrics, you're looking at 13 weeks of history at a glance, so you can see patterns and trends. And last week you said you were going to send out 8 proposals, each worth $40,000 on average, because that's what you need to do to hit your quarterly sales goal, right? And last week you did 6. So if I'm the head of sales, when we're reviewing that scorecard number, the person running the meeting says, sales proposals on track or off track, and I have to say out loud in front of my fellow leaders, off track. And what we do there is we drop that number down to the issues list, and then later when we're prioritizing and solving issues, all our off-track scorecard numbers are on that list, and we're going to IDS, which stands for identify, discuss, and solve, just a way of solving issues at the root. We're going to get right to the root of why we didn't hit our proposals number last week, and I'm going to take a to-do, a 7-day action item, to go fix it and get that number back on track next week. There's kind of no hiding from an off-track number when you're running your business on data.
This is what I love with the to do part. That they have to complete in the next 7 days. It's like somebody commits to doing something. It's there. You can't hide from it. And I
That's
even
right.
like using the level 10 model with customers. Because like often like a customer is supposed to get you XYZ, and they're kind of like, and then if it's in there, it's not you don't have to bring it up and make them feel bad. It's
Yeah.
there. And they have to kind of live up to it. So I'm a huge fan about this. And a friend of mine, very successful businessman, he told me, Sanjeev Sithu, who founded O2 Communications and I2 Technologies. He told me the perfect question to ask a salesperson when they're not hitting the numbers. He asked me like, what's the perfect question? I came up with a bunch of, and then he said like, no, the best one is to ask them, when did you notice it first that you're off track? Because this, if people ask themselves always this, then they know that they have to have their forecasting in line. They can come to you for help. It's not like the month runs out and then like oopsie. Like
That's right.
really powerful question. I use it all the time. So awesome. So the next part would
Next
be
component is issues.
issues.
And an issue is not just a problem, challenge, or roadblock. It's anything we as a team need to talk about to achieve our vision. It could be an opportunity, an idea, a piece of information that's valuable and is going to make us better. Those are issues. And so to strengthen the issues solving ability of the business, we use two tools and disciplines. The first one is a very simple issues list, which, while there are some tactical components, is really about cultural change in your organization. In most organizations, people are reluctant to admit when we've got an issue we need to solve. I'm afraid as an individual contributor to admit to my boss or my coworkers that I don't know how to do my job. When a customer's upset with us and I'm the person they're talking to, I'm going to try really hard to fix it myself. But if I can't fix it myself, I'm terrified to go tell other people. And so what we're really trying to do is we're trying to teach the entire organization, starting at the leadership team level, that it's really healthy and valuable to change the culture to celebrate when somebody has the courage to speak up and say, we're not perfect. I need help. We've got a problem. And so that's step one. Step two is when people are bringing issues to the table, you got to teach everybody in the organization, again, starting at the leadership level, how to solve those issues at the root and make them go away forever, rather than wrapping duct tape and twine around them and shoving them into the corner of the office and hoping they don't blow up on you. And so we teach this discipline IDS that helps the leadership team get right to the root of why they have the issue in the first place, identify an action and an owner for that action to solve it, and make it go away forever. Super simple, but very powerful discipline.
Yeah, I love it. We took it to one step further with the error culture to really celebrate the errors that we have. And I'm curious what you think about this. We have an error log where we add every error, every customer complaint, every mess up, like everything that goes wrong, we add to this error log. And then in the IDS, or like in the meeting, after we go through the KPIs, we look at the error log, and then we kind of see what came up. And the error log is like which customers affected, who reported it, what happens, which process can we improve, is it solved or not, and then we kind of like drill into which process do we have to optimize to solve this. So because errors are no problem, like mess ups are totally cool. If we do the same one over and over, then we have to talk. But nobody gets in trouble for admitting an error, but you get in serious trouble if you don't add the error to the error log. So this is like kind of like the thing that we came up with, and it's working really well.
That's a lovely way of looking at it, and it's completely aligned with what we're trying to teach. The culture in most organizations is you're terrified of these things that aren't perfect, and if you can't be comfortable, as a human, much less an organization, if you can't be comfortable with imperfection, you're never going to approach perfection, right? Because we're not, none of us is perfect. So you got it exactly right.
I'm actually always happy, even so sounds weird, but I'm happy for every mistake. So we have the opportunity to fix this. I'm happy for every mess up that we are aware of, so we can kind of like moving forward, it's like a machine that has like a gear that's not really turning. And the idea is always that we are a self-healing machine. We always get better and better and better and better and better with each iteration.
Right. And from the business's perspective, if you catch it before the customer gets it,
yes,
the impact of the error is so much lower. And so you should be celebrating these things. You should be celebrating the customer that calls to complain rather than just leaving and finding a competitor, because then you have an opportunity to get better as opposed to just wondering why your customers are leaving out the back door. I couldn't agree more.
Customer success mindset.
Yep.
Perfect. Excuse me. So issues list, IDS, error log. What's next?
Process or process, depending on what part of the world you're from and whether you use the Queen's English or someone else's. And the good news is a co-author by the name of Lisa Gonzalez and I are working on the book to strengthen the process component, part of the trash library right now. Super passionate about this too. So in an EOS company, we believe that getting the handful of core processes that make you and your organization uniquely valuable to the world, documented, simplified, and followed by all, will free the owner, leadership team, and managers of the organization up to concentrate their time, energy, wisdom, experience on taking the business to the next level. And so we take a 20/80 approach to documenting and simplifying all those core processes, just a handful, things like your talent or people process, your marketing process, your sales process, a handful of operating processes, an accounting process, a process for the way you run your business like EOS. Do you all agree how you're going to do those things every day at a high level? Can you write them down? And then can we agree to use those tools as basic training aids for our brand new people in the organization? We document the 20% of the steps that get the 80% of the results. We do not believe in 500-page SOP manuals with a set of rigid guidelines that tell everybody exactly how to do everything. We're just trying to bring a little bit of structure, discipline, consistency, and accountability to doing it the right way every time, and that's the process component.
Yeah, I'm a total SOP nerd, and like two things that you didn't mention I really love about SOPs is when you scale, when you add new people, when somebody, you fire somebody leaves, whatever, somebody's sick, getting somebody new in does not, destroy the life of the manager for a while. Right. So from the scaling component, this is just like, super, super valuable. And the second thing, once you write something down, you find so many imperfections in that, like so many like, oh, like this is actually 3 departments touch this, like, no, we should kind of like do this here, it's like, it's so valuable. It's actually really doing them is quite a lot of work, and it's like really painful actually to do them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And especially when you're the owner of the company, first initially I started like, okay, I just kind of did it myself, and then I thought like, no, I just like have all the department heads, everybody just kind of describes their processes, and it was like, oh my god, everything got so much easier.
As much as anything, I think the key is getting the leadership team engaged in the value of this exercise and getting the visionary founder of the organization to acknowledge that while it was great to just naturally and instinctively figure out the best way to do everything as you were growing this business from scratch and you didn't need to teach anybody else how to do it, we now have 10 or 40 or 70 people, and that approach to running our business is no longer the right way to do it. And so that's what we're trying to do with this book, is appeal to the most visionary people in your organization and say, not only is this not going to ruin the entrepreneurial spirit you've always wanted this business to exude, but it's going to perpetuate it because you and the rest of the entrepreneurial people in your organization aren't going to have to get sucked into the tall grass the way you have the last couple of years when your frontline people don't know how to do the basic work the way you figured out how to do it 5 or 7 or 11 years ago. That's what the mission is with the process component.
Funny story. When we sold our last business, MaxCDN, it was bought by StackPath, and the founder of StackPath had a very large business before, SoftLayer, which was sold to IBM for $2 billion. And I became the CMO of the business, of the business that bought us. They bought like a few other businesses, and I was putting together the brand, and I always pulled the CEO into meetings, kind of like showing like, okay, this is what we're doing, this is where we are, kind of getting his feedback. And he sat through like 3 meetings. It's like, okay, that's great. And then left. This was like his only comment. I'm like, after the 3rd time I took him aside, like, dude, like, am I messing up? Like, don't you care? Like, what the heck? Like, what's going on? It's like, no, I only have 3 things to do in this business. Number 1 is I have to make sure we have enough money. So make sure money is coming in. The second thing is I have to hire smart people that are much better than me for the department heads. And the third thing I have to do is preach the mission and the vision like a parrot to the outside world and to the inside world. And it's like, holy cow, because like I was like, before I was in the mindset of like kind of like stirring the pot everywhere, kind of being involved in everything. And now that I'm it's now that I'm using EOS and actually have a portfolio of businesses, and I'm not involved in day to day in most of them, and everything is running smoothly, which would have been never, actually I think I caused like so many stress, insecurities, and drama and chaos by always kind of jumping in and it's like, no, let's do this, and people kind of like getting stuck and and so, yeah, it's like super helpful.
You learn the power of letting go. And you also probably learned that as long as somebody who works for you feels like you need to be involved in their decision making, they won't take responsibility for their own decision making. It's just too easy to come to David and ask his opinion every time
this is broken, like, please help now. I was like, no, like, you own this is your thing, and it's like really empowering for them. And then you really see people blossom and like kind of like, holy cow, would have never thought this person's capable of doing this if you really empower them. And it's like the letting go part was pretty tough in the beginning, but it's like, it takes like an investment into this person, and it takes the trust into this person, and and then kind of like getting them to this point, letting go, like even if they make some mistakes, you would have done it better, but like otherwise it does not scale. That's so
Agreed. So awesome. that brings us to the traction component. We talked a good deal about that, but there's 2 things I want to share about instilling discipline and accountability throughout the organization. Before I go there, I want to say something to the people watching who own companies and who are visionary entrepreneurs, because that audience hears me talk about discipline and accountability in public speaking events all over the world. And what I like to ask those groups of people is I say, how many of you just heard me say discipline and accountability and sat back in your chair and thought, that's exactly what I need EOS to help the rest of my people do? And everybody kind of raises their hand, and I say, good, because I'm coming for you. And so the big point I want to make is, what we do when we implement EOS in an organization is we make sure the leadership team is accountable first and disciplined and focused on the right stuff, because it's really difficult to drive accountability into the rank and file if the leadership team's not focused on the right stuff, executing with discipline and accountability. And the 2 tools we find most helpful there are something we call rocks, which is a term coined by Stephen Covey and popularized by Vern Harnish. But in an EOS company, a rock is a 90-day business priority. And what that means is we ask the leadership team to identify the 3 to 7 most important goals for this quarter, every single quarter, to clearly articulate, write a smart rock defining exactly what done looks like 90 days from now, assign a single person to own each of those rocks on the leadership team, and leave the meeting crystal clear on the company's and each member of the team's 3 to 7 priorities for the quarter. And that drives clarity, focus, discipline, and accountability like nobody's business. And ultimately, we migrate the 90-day world that creates for the organization down into the company so that everybody has at least one rock a quarter. That's the first thing we do. And then the other thing we do is implement that level 10 meeting pulse on top of the 90-day world that you talked about earlier. So each week we're checking in on scorecard numbers being on track, rocks being on track, customer and employees being happy. Are we completing our to-dos, and are we prioritizing and resolving our issues? And with those two tools and disciplines, we're driving real discipline and accountability, top to bottom, side to side throughout the organization. It makes a huge difference, and it starts at the top.
Yes, very much so. I'm in love. Level 10 meetings, it's just like the whole system, just really works. Another thing I love about the level 10 meetings, because like I forgot about this like countless times before, is the cascading messages. It's kind of like, it's like at the end you kind of like take a notes on, like, what do I have to share with the rest of the organizations or customers or whatever. And then
we've made a bunch of decisions, we've solved a bunch of issues, we've agreed amongst ourselves what we're going to go do. Are we all clear on who we're going to tell, how we're going to tell them, and when we're going to tell them when we leave this room? Is what cascading messages is. And that's a step that a lot of lousy meetings leave out. And so it's critical that you all leave that meeting crystal clear on the communication rules. Otherwise, what happens is the head of sales goes and announces something to everybody on their team that the rest of the leaders think we're keeping confidential for a month, and really bad stuff starts to happen.
Been there multiple times.
Yeah.
And the other thing, which is also super cool, is the why the level 10 meetings are called level 10 meetings, because at the end, we ask, like, around the room, from 0 to 10, please rate the meeting. If it's below an 8, please tell the rest of the group why it's below an 8. Kind of like having this transparency and openness, and kind of like this culture of
right.
just having this.
Yeah, and for the record, I have a funny story about that. So one of my best friends in business in one of the entrepreneurial companies I ran, when he found out I was an EOS implementer and had a thriving practice, and he asked me what I was doing for a living, and I simplified it by saying, well, mostly I'm helping people run meetings for a living. And he said, wait, nobody on the planet hates meetings more than you, Peyton. How can this be your career? And I say, yeah, I did hate meetings, but now my point is, what most people do when they're in a company that runs lousy meetings is, if they talk about it at all, it's one-off. After the meeting, the two people who are most upset go meet at the bar and they complain about everybody else. And what we do with the meeting rating at the end is, we're asking you, if the meeting was bad, say why, so we can all work together to make it better. That's the purpose of rating the meeting, so the leadership team can work together to make every meeting a level 10. You deserve that. It should be the most important, efficient, and valuable part of your week, not a waste of time that everybody dreads.
Yeah, bad meetings are so bad for morale, and you have a bunch of stuff to do, and it's like just the cost of if you have 10 people in the meeting, the hourly cost of, like, these people bringing it together is just, it's
couldn't agree more.
Very cool. I think we're through with the 6 parts, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So I have a few more questions that I want to ask you, and then some audience questions.
Fire away.
In terms of the size of the company, kind of like, which company size do you think it makes sense to implement EOS? And I now that I'm aware of it, like, even if I start a new business, I kind of like start with getting the VTO done, etc. Like kind of like it's I can't live without it anymore. But where do you think, like, from where to where, and like, at what is there a point where it breaks?
If EOS was built for companies that are privately held, have between 10 and 250 people, and whose owners and leaders are growth-oriented, open-minded, more afraid of the status quo than they are of change, want help, want to be open, honest, and vulnerable with their people. So there's some size and structure characteristics that are important, and there's some sort of psychographic tendencies that are really important. There are plenty of companies larger than 250 employees, plenty of companies smaller than 250 employees, and plenty of companies that aren't privately held that run on EOS. What's really important is that the people in charge really want to run their business this way. If that's not the case, it really doesn't work. Everything else is a matter of preference and, how important it is to do this stuff. So that's the ideal starting point.
Yeah, with one of my businesses, we're above 250, but it still works great. So it's like,
yeah. Well, the bigger the company gets, the more complex it gets, and EOS favors a very simple model. So if you have a lot of people who don't like anything that's simple and everything's got to be matrix and confusing and really smart, I mean, EOS is a pretty tough system, but that's why I always just simplify it and say, if this is the leadership team and you guys are in charge, you got to really want to run your business this way, and this is going to work.
Simplicity is the highest form of sophistication. I think it's Leonardo da Vinci. And then other favorite quote that I really love from Albert Einstein is, every intelligent fool can make things bigger, more violent, and more complex. It takes a touch of genius to go the other way. So I'm a huge fan of keeping it simple.
Well, first of all, I'm honored that in a conversation with me, you thought of both Da Vinci and Einstein. That doesn't
happen. Question that I often get, because I never used an implementer. I just read the book, and because of my previous experience with business, kind of like going through the, realizing that we don't have a mission vision, that this is why so many stuff is breaking, and like also with the rocks, we also had similar problems, and then we implemented these things ourselves. Like definitely not as good as what you have there. So I didn't feel a need for an implementer, because it came very natural to me to implement this in the business. But what do you say? Like implementer, yes, no, kind of how do you make this decision?
Yeah. So this EOS is a simple system full of practical tools and concepts most business leaders have heard about before. And it was built in a way where you and your leadership team could implement it with the basic tools we provide to leadership teams and entrepreneurial companies. That said, there are some real advantages to using a professional. And the only thing I would beg your listeners to commit to, even if their intention is to self-implement from the start, is I would beg them to reach out to me or one of my fellow professional EOS implementers around the globe. We have more than 400 people on 5 continents and 22 countries. I would beg them to reach out to a professional implementer and do a 90-minute meeting with one of us before you begin the journey. There's no charge for that meeting, but what it's going to do is it's going to paint a picture for you and your team of what done looks like when you've implemented EOS. It's kind of like having the cover of a jigsaw puzzle box when you're doing the jigsaw puzzle yourself. It really
helps a lot.
Yeah. And that meeting is also the best way for a leadership team to answer the question for themselves: should we do this ourselves and do it with a professional implementer? The couple of advantages to using an implementer are as follows. Number one, we are experts on EOS implementation. While it's simple, it isn't always easy. And so what's going to happen on your implementation journey is you're going to come up with a bunch of stuff that your leadership team isn't sure how to do, and they're going to be looking at you as the self-implementer member of the leadership team to give them the answer, and you're not really going to know the answer. So it's kind of convenient to have an expert in the room. It takes the pressure off of you to know the right answer, okay? Number two, I think it's a lot harder to make important change happen at a fundamental level from within a leadership team. And for no other reason than you have to live with your people for the 89 days between session 1 and session 2, and I don't. So if somebody needs to hear, hey, Bill, you're kind of being a jerk and the rest of your leadership team is frustrated with you right now, it can be easier for a team member to have somebody like me say that than you have to say that. The fallout is less severe. So that's another reason. And then lastly, my longtime clients who decide to do this stuff themselves and then come back to me and ask me to run all of their sessions or some of their sessions, they do it simply because it's really hard to both participate in a meeting and you're constantly switching hats. And so those are the couple of advantages. But, I urge anybody who's interested in this stuff to buy the 5 books in the, at least Traction, and maybe some of the other books in the Traction library. Read the books, download the free tools on our website, use the other tools available to you, and use a professional EOS implementer for a 90-minute meeting, and then you make up your mind what makes the most sense for you.
And they can find them on EOS Worldwide. They can find
based on
region,
a one-stop shop for everything you need. You can find not only the tools, but also people like me.
Then any recommendations for, since you said you're nerding out on a new book about processes, any tools that you like a process street or any documentation tools too?
So the pure EOS teaching is simpler is better, but what we're seeing more and more these days is simple isn't always 1 to 3 page Word document with a series of bulleted checklists. And so we're seeing more workflow documentations, animated process decks where things actually move on the screen. And then a lot of clients are transitioning to video process decks where basically if there's a way to screw on a lug nut to a tire, you simply videotape it, put it in a training library full of videotapes, and that becomes, so yes, I'm a big fan of any tool that automates teaching the people in your business how to do the most important things the right and best way every time. I personally don't have a favorite or a tool I don't like. I just urge my clients to go research the options out there and pick the tool
that fits for them. Same for running level 10 meetings. There's 90.io and there's a bunch of stuff out there.
Yeah. There are 2 official licensed partners of EOS Worldwide, Traction Tools and 90.io, and EOS Worldwide itself is beta testing now a software application called EOS One. That will automate the back end of an EOS implementation as well. So lots of options. Pick the one that fits you best is kind of the right answer there.
Actually, one of my businesses is UpCoach, which is a tool to allow coaches to run their coaching better. And since I'm an EOS nerd, I built a few elements in. You can have a meeting and agenda builder, so you can build your own level 10 meetings, and we use it to run our business as well. And you can have online courses for the process documentation, kind of training up people, etc. So it's It's
what I am. I feel like I'm living at a very fortunate time, and that stuff that people used to avoid doing like the plague because it was so much work and so few people would get benefit from it, like documenting SOPs in a 700-page manual, now is being done with technology where it costs less money, takes less time, and has a bigger impact within weeks rather than taking forever. And so I just think the speed of business is increasing at an amazing velocity right now. And it is important for leaders to stay connected to the things that are making formerly difficult, time-consuming activities much easier and much more effective.
One example, loom.com, where you can just take a screen recording while you see a picture of the person teaching it, and it just it's so quick. Boom, you have a link to share. Boom, embedded in the document. Done. It's
right. And if you're not worried about that being perfect, one take does it, right? Where I see a lot of people getting caught up is they want to make everything perfect. And so they won't roll out their recording until they've done it exactly the right way with all the right words and
with no ums and ahs and etc.
Yeah, that's right. I would much rather you roll out something that's 80% of the way there and improve it over time than ready, aim.
Yeah, iterative approach. Also with the SOPs, you're gonna change them up all the time anyway. So don't fall into this trap.
That's right.
Awesome. So now we come to audience questions. If anybody's on the live stream, and you can leave a comment. I should see these the responses or the questions they have here in the chat in this restream.io, which I'm using, which is working pretty awesomely. Awesome. So the question I got before when I asked on social media from a bunch of people send me emails because it's a big topic right now. We're remote first companies, and we're also a remote first company. And global teams, with people all over the globe, like how do you run your level 10 meetings? Can you run them asynchronously? I read that GitLab is doing it that way. I'm curious your take, like what are the best practices? What are you seeing? Like, can it be done asynchronously? Do you have to have the in-person meetings? Of course they're good for culture and team and communication, but does it work?
Well, so EOS Worldwide is a remote team, and I was the visionary for EOS Worldwide for a little over 5 years, and we ran all of our weekly level 10 meetings remotely. We ran all of our quarterly and annual meetings in person. There is something about culture and team building and open and honest communication and healthy resolution of conflict that works better without a screen between participants. But I would tell you in the last year, with the requirement that we all spend more time working remotely, what I've come to discover, it is far easier to run a healthy, fully engaged virtual meeting with everybody participating via Zoom or whatever application you use, as long as everybody agrees to follow a handful of very simple rules. And one of those rules is you have to behave as though you're in the same room with everybody. And if you're one of those people who thinks you can get away with pretending you're paying attention because you're not in the room with your teammates, you need to know that we can tell when you're staring at your lap for 7 minutes that you're not paying attention to what's going on, right? And so it just requires full engagement. And what I've learned over the last year as an old guy using technology, David, is that as long as we're all willing to sacrifice and fully engage with one another, whether you're in the room together or connecting via a screen, you can run a great meeting.
Yeah, we have like rules like video camera has to be on.
Yep.
For a mic cannot be muted, etc. So you can even start typing, you hear it, whatever. Yeah. But like in terms of having it asynchronously, for example, like kind of running it in a forum or just leaving comments, because my business partner is moving to Singapore right now, and he's in Europe, but he's moving to Singapore. Our head of sales is in Los Angeles. I'm in Turkey, so we're gonna have like some definite time zone issues.
So here's what I'd say about that. I haven't seen that work, and here's why. And it goes back to old school technology, right? One of the reasons Gino was so passionate about this 90-minute meeting pulse every week, where you're coming together as a leadership team, is he saw a lot of teams trying to share information in meetings and solve issues via email. This was a long time ago. Okay, I realize a lot of your listeners don't even know what email is or don't use it a lot, okay? But what we believe is when you need to solve an issue, let's just say ops is frustrated with sales and the person in charge of finance has an opinion, the only way you can resolve that issue without anything else needing to happen is you get all the stakeholders in the room, you roll up your sleeves, you look one another in the eye, and you have a conversation until you resolve the issue. That's why I think synchronous. You can't do that via chat. You just can't.
Yeah, I agree. We were just like, I mean, it's.
Well, it's 11:30 your time, so somebody's going to have to do this, right?
It's 12:30. Yeah. And, I have no problem with this. All right, cool. Another question from the audience was a reasonable expectation on percentage of completed rocks in the business, like overall, like, how much should be 80% of the rocks be done? Like, what's
80%. Yeah, a
80%.
highly accountable team completes 80% of their rocks every quarter. A highly accountable person completes 80% of their rocks every quarter. The reason for 80% versus 90 or 100 is when you set your completion standard too high, you tend to be less aggressive with your rock setting. So if you set the standard at 100%, you're going to convince people that they should never sign up for anything they aren't sure they
no stretch goals. Yeah.
That's not realistic in an entrepreneurial company. So 80% is the answer.
Perfect. And then how to get buy-in from everybody in the company? What's for me it was always like level 10, because this is like the quickest thing. People see results, and then they have buy-in, so like believing that the other stuff that's in there makes sense as well. Yeah. What hacks and tips do you have?
You're going to invite a little Paton rant here, which the people who know me best know is inevitable in any conversation. So I actually hate the term buy-in with a passion, because to me it implies that there's some amount of money you should pay me to pretend I believe in the same things you believe in as a business owner. So what we talk about is getting your vision shared by all.
Okay.
And so what that means is once the leadership team's answered the 8 questions on the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer, and you have your core values, core focus, 10-year target, marketing strategy, 3-year picture, 1-year plan, quarterly rocks and issues list all built, we want you as a leadership team to stand up in front of everybody in your company and tell them where the company's going, how you plan to get there, and what they can do to help you achieve your vision. And then we want you to do that every quarter for the next 7 quarters, because we believe people need to hear you 7 times to really hear you for the first time. And when you do that, after 7 quarters, everybody who wants to help you stays, and everybody who doesn't want to help you or doesn't care leaves, and that's what vision shared by all means. I don't want my leadership team spending any time or energy convincing someone they're right about the vision. I just want them to share the vision and let people make their own decisions. Life is too short to try and convince somebody to stay in your rowboat if they really want to swim for the shore. Let them swim for the shore.
Yeah,
That's
makes sense.
Yeah.
You should not hold travelers back, so it's like,
that's right.
Awesome. And then the last one we have here in the comments is it's about the level 10 meetings, and like, should people go over, like, kind of spell out like each rock, each KPI, should everything be vocalized, each rock and each KPI, etc.? Should everybody should kind of read through it quietly and then kind of add it to it, or should people kind of present it?
Yeah. So in the level 10, when you're reviewing your scorecard measurables, the right pulse is this. If I'm running the meeting, I simply read the number. So the number is, say, number of qualified leads. So I say number of qualified leads. The person who's accountable for generating qualified leads looks at the scorecard, and if they hit their number, they say out loud, on track, or they say out loud, off track. And the reason I like it vocalized, the reason we teach you vocalize it, is because if you're human and accountable and you say off track 2 or 3 weeks in a row, it is awful, and you're personally motivated to get it back on track. That's why the vocalization is important. So I'd say do that with both scorecard and rocks, and your meetings will be better.
I love it. That makes so much sense. And the last question I have for you is, do you have any other secrets, hacks, tricks similar to the error log that we have implemented in our business that others are using that you've seen? It's not part of the book, something that you think, okay, that's really awesome. Everybody's doing this, like give me the good stuff.
Well, that's another reason to use a professional implementer. I probably have 280 of them. But I'm going to share one with you that just came up recently with a client. They had a team of people that was struggling to come up with individual scorecarding metrics because they felt like most teams that it was only fair to be held accountable for the things that they could completely control. Okay? I don't want you measuring that because I don't completely control the outcome. Okay? And so one of the tricks I like to have teams like that do is take a simple legal pad out, draw a line down the center of the legal pad so it's got two columns, write good week at the top of the left column and lousy week at the top of the right column, and ask every member of the team to write down all the things that happened in the last good week they had in the department. And then have them write down a list of all the things that happened in the last lousy week they had in the department. And you will have to endure a lot of jokes about how they can't remember the last good week, but they're going to be writing down a bunch of stuff about this week for the second column. But when you do that, everybody writes like crazy, and you end up with two columns on the whiteboard with like 25 things you could measure on a weekly basis, and you just have to go through and pick a handful of that makes sense to start measuring. And all of a sudden you built your first iteration of a departmental scorecard for a team of people who aren't comfortable being accountable for anything.
That's really cool. It kind of answers another question that came up once you started talking that like I heard a lot of times. KPIs for developers, it's like it's kind of hard to come up with, because like sales is very clear to measure, ops stuff is more clear to measure, but with developers, like, yeah, do you have like anything that comes up standard? And then with the tip that you just gave, I guess we could figure it out. But have you seen like
standard KPIs for this? And the way this usually comes up in a session with the leadership team is the head of sales and the head of dev are arguing, because we never release anything on time, and you're running an agile shop, and so you've got a series of 2-week sprints, and I'm not going to commit to a product release in 90 days because I don't know what's going to happen when we're doing our story work and so on. So I see clients solve this problem in several different ways. The first thing I'll do is I'll talk to the leader of dev, and I'll say, listen, you got to understand the business cannot operate if you can't make any kind of representation about what you can build when. And so run agile in the background, but you got to kind of meet us halfway towards being able to say, I think it's reasonable to have a minimum viable product in market by September, right? And so I try and get them to move a little ways. And then I'll just say to the head of dev, what do you task your people with doing on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis? And they'll say things like, well, they've got to complete sprints, or they've got milestones in their task list that they've got to hit. They had 3 tasks due last week, and I'll say, well, how many did they complete? 2 of 3. So is 67% task completion acceptable to you? No, it's not. Well, maybe that's the number you measure, percentage of tasks completed last week. And so, again, it's just a conversation. This technique
it's really good, yeah.
Manifested a slightly different way. You can't move an organization forward without evaluating whether the quantity and quality of work done on a regular basis met or exceeded your expectations. And you just got to figure out a way to do that that's reliable and consistent. And then you're going to keep iterating as you go until you settle on exactly the right thing. One last thing, David, I'll say, when you have 20 people reporting to you, it might be that you score each of them a little differently because their jobs are different or what they need to work on is different too. So I would urge the tech leaders out there to think about personalizing the scorecard for their people a little bit. If you run sales, a seasoned sales rep maybe isn't going to have the same scorecard week to week as somebody who's brand new and just needs to be reminded to go hit the phones and dial for dollars, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this makes sense. It's really good. Mike, this was really, really awesome. I could go on for another 2 hours, but I want to be mindful of your time. This was like really, I'm super stoked. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Anything you want to share with the audience, something you want to pitch, some other tools, resources you want to recommend, some
Yeah.
leave people can download.
One passionate plea. If you're feeling stuck or frustrated and you're not getting everything from your business that you want, find help. And if what I shared with you today sounds appealing, go to eosworldwide.com and learn more. And feel free to reach out personally to me, M. Paton, Paton, at eosworldwide.com, and I'll either help you myself or direct you to somebody in your neighborhood that can help. That's all I really have to share. I just want you to get what you want from your business.
Awesome. Thank you very much for coming on the show. This was super exciting for me. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And
Thank you, David. This was fun.